If we could come to order, please. It's 7 p.m. We'll start this meeting of the Trophy Club Planning and Zoning Commission. 6 of our 7 commissioners are present. Commissioner Barberin is expected, but we're not sure exactly when he'll arrive. We'll start, as always, with our public comments portion of the agenda, where it's an opportunity for citizens to address the board on any matter. The board isn't permitted to discuss or take action on any presentations made to the board. Presentations are limited to matters over which the board has authority, and speakers have up to 4 minutes or a time limit determined by the presiding officer. Each speaker must complete the speaker's form that includes the topics to be presented. Matt, do we have anyone that was wanting to present during citizens' presentations?
I think just Ms. Halsey was going to.
Well,
probably
the regular agenda item.
Yeah, regular.
And I don't, seeing no one in the audience, we'll move on to a regular session item number 1, case SUP-22-001, Social Oak Lounge alcohol on premises. So this is a public hearing item. We'll have a public hearing where each interested party will have an opportunity to speak, and then the public hearing will be closed, and the board will open the action item, and the commissioners will be able to discuss and take action. So it is 7:01 p.m. and the public hearing is open. Case SUP-22-001A, conduct a public hearing regarding a request made by Social Oak Lounge for a specific use permit for alcoholic beverage sales for on-premises consumption in conjunction with a restaurant use located at 2230 East Highway 114, number 550. And I'll invite staff to present first, if you guys don't mind.
Good evening. It's been a while.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody.
That's right. So we've got Social Oak. They're requesting actually 2 SUPs. Y'all have seen that in the packet. The first one is for on-premise consumption. A lot of these will be redundant, but I'll go through it. The property zoning for the planned development PD 30 does not restrict the sales of alcohol beverages beyond just the state and our town code regulations. So we have in the packets, you probably saw the TABC licensing, so they are required to apply on our end. They've got to apply first, and they've applied for mixed beverage and also the late hours permit, which will allow sales consumption between 12 midnight and 2 a.m. The town does not have any restrictions, again, beyond the TABC's regulations. Social Oak Lounge complies with the town and state on the distance requirements. The closest church is 1,205 feet away, and then pretty much all the other locations are further. The chief of police has reviewed the application as required by our codes. Notice of public hearing was sent out as required by state law. The town attorney has reviewed with no objections, and the staff does recommend approval of this SUP. So if you got any questions, the applicant, her brother is in the hospital, and so she called like within an hour ago and said there's no way I can get here. So y'all probably hear her little presentation at the council meeting, but it's a pretty neat little place.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Since we're still in the public hearing portion of this item, I'll ask if there is anyone here from the public that wishes to speak. If so, you can approach the podium or submit a piece of paper. It doesn't look like we have one. So I'll close the public hearing at 7:04 p.m. and open up the action item, which is item B, discussion and recommendation regarding a request made by Social Oak Lounge for a specific use permit for alcoholic beverage sales for on-premises consumption in conjunction with a restaurant use located at 2230 East Highway 114, number 550. So commissioners, this is our opportunity to discuss and bring a motion to the floor, and I'll leave it to you guys if you have any questions.
Sure. Matt, how does what's being asked for here differ in any way to any of the other businesses serving alcohol in that area?
There's not.
Okay.
This is just like the Blue 22 and Anime is all the other restaurants. It's just as per ordinance and PD 30, we've got to bring this.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions? Gentlemen? Yes, sir.
Which building is it in?
This is going to be right next door to Blue 22. It's going to be the other, it's not technically a half, it's about, Blue 22 takes up about 2/3 of that suite, and then they're going to take up the other third.
Okay,
So they will be right there next to the vault, if y'all are familiar with that.
between the blue and the Volt.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anyone wishing to make a motion? Commissioner Stevens?
Make a motion to approve the request.
I'll second. Motion on the floor to approve the SUP as requested. Is there any discussion amongst the commissioners? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? There are none. It's unanimous 6-0. And we'll move on to our second item, which is similar in structure, case SUP-22-002, Social Oak Lounge alcohol off premises. We'll start with our public hearing. Item A, public hearing is open as of 7:06 p.m. Conduct a public hearing regarding a request made by Social Oak Lounge for a specific use permit for alcoholic beverage sales for off-premises consumption to be sold from the Social Oak Lounge located at 2230 East Highway 114, number 550. Matt, the floor is yours. I assume you'll let us know what the differences are here between this and the previous item.
Yes, sir. So really the only difference for off-premise consumption is they're requesting to be able to sell wine and beer contained, not opened, and for them for someone to take home. Similar to walking into 7-Eleven, buying, and then leaving.
All right, thank you. Any members of the public wishing to speak during the public hearing? We had no speakers submitted, so we'll close the public hearing at 7:07 and move on to the action item B, discussion and recommendation regarding a request made by Social Oak Lounge for a specific use permit for alcoholic beverage sales for off-premises consumption to be sold from the Social Oak Lounge located at 2230 East Highway 114, number 550. Commissioners, the floor is yours if you have any questions for Matt.
I have one question. The off-premise sales that grow out of the pandemic, we're gonna blame it on the pandemic, picking up orders, and that seems to be where it started.
Well, except for
I'm sure
the,
those permits have always been available, but for a restaurant, it seems odd.
yes, but for this was unique that you've got a restaurant, you've got where you can sit down, eat, drink, which is what y'all are recommending approval on the first one. This one will also be is that they'll have a retail side, that if there was something that you had that you liked that's a unique wine that maybe you can't get at a, liquor store, that you can buy it there and then take it home.
Kind of like a growler shop type concept, if you're familiar with that, where people, sell beer to go that they don't brew on site.
So she is specifically, these will be all closed containers, so.
Right, but that's a state law thing. I mean, it has to be, if it's sold for off-premise consumption, it has to be, already bottled or sealed or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Any other questions for staff on this one?
Yeah, I do. Is there like a wine, I'm gonna say a wine store or a retail outlet within this building? Or you're just sitting at the bar and you go, I like this, give me a bottle?
I don't really know the answer to that. The concept that she was telling me was some of the, I was trying to think. I guess if you have off to the right-hand side, like when you walk in, you may have just a small retail section before you go into the restaurant. So, and I think also that if you had something there that you liked, then you could buy, a bottle and take home.
Yeah, and clarify, my understanding of state law for Commissioner Jablonski's question is I don't think the state makes a differentiation between those two types of points of sale.
Right.
It's all about the packaging, basically, how it's
Yes.
packaged on the way out the door
Right.
is what matters.
But
to
Chili's,
ABC.
like Chili's does not have this ability. You couldn't go into Chili's and buy a bottle of tequila and leave.
Right.
So Matt, would you compare this to say, so if you walk into Starbucks, they have a small section where you can buy coffee cups, coffee, maybe some other goods, right? So I think it sounds like they'll have a small little
Yes.
shop set up in there
Yes,
that you
sir.
could take advantage of.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, is there any time limitation on the carryout? I mean, they're gonna be open till 2 AM, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there any time limitation on the carryout?
It still just falls under TABC rules.
And I don't know what those are.
Well,
They would,
I mean,
they would stop at midnight on Sunday or Saturday night, I can tell you that, because you
Yeah.
can't buy before 10 AM, because it gets me every time.
that's right. Yeah. So it would be the same as like 7-Eleven.
Right.
So as long as they're open, then off-premise sales are
That's correct. And then they would follow, if they do have a brunch, then they would be following in those guidelines for the noon.
A similar, the one fairly local example I can think of that has this hybrid offering would be Wise Guys in Roanoke, Wise Guys Pizza, because they will fill and cap a growler for you to take. In addition, to obviously, serving beer there at the restaurant. So
Yeah.
that's the sort of thought process. Although this sounds like it would be possibly prepackaged and in refrigeration and stuff like that. Cool. Thanks for the clarification. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, same to the previous request, which is, are other businesses neighboring this, do they have the same license already?
No, they
This
don't.
would be completely unique to that area?
Yes, sir, it would. It would be unique to that. So, and I believe she's wanting, again, I don't want to speak for her, but just in our conversations of, not the normal wines that you would pick up from, not the normal whiskeys, not the those kind of things. So that's what she's bringing.
And what this is, for context, some years ago, after we had exhausted all of the various local option elections, Trophy Club, I think, has had 3 different local option elections over the years for alcohol sales. I think it was like 2001, and then 2004, and then again in 2016. So after, I was on council at that time in 2016, and so after that was done, we went back into our zoning ordinance, and we looked at, I believe Ron Ruthven was the planner at that time, and we said, now that we have all of these, avenues available, do we have zoning regulations that meet each flavor of license that TABC issues? And his answer was yes, because we already had them in piecemeal. The only difference is with, the way things have changed in recent years is that some of these businesses are choosing to stack more than one type of sales license within the same concept, which wasn't, 10 years ago, you didn't really see that very often, but you're starting to see it more now, I think. So, because they already, like the previous item, they were requesting they have an RM style license from TABC, which is restaurant style, and this one is a BG, which is like a retailer style. So those are 2 different types of.
Which is what 7-Eleven has. And
Right, and the TABC allows a single location to carry more than one.
That's right.
Given they follow all the regulations that go along with it. Cool. Any other thoughts or questions, guys? Any other discussion?
I didn't mention, but parking, the parking needs, they've all been addressed as well.
Right, yeah. I guess that would have already been addressed. Yeah, so floor is open for a motion if anyone would like to make one.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Branham, second by Commissioner Biggs to approve. Any discussion for the motion on the floor? All right, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, there are none. That one also passes unanimously, 6-0.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to item number 3 on our agenda tonight, which also has a public hearing and action item structure, so we'll follow the same pattern as before and start with the public hearing. Case PD 22-001 for 54 and 56 Meadowbrook Lane. It's 7:14 and our public hearing is open. We'll conduct a public hearing regarding a request made by Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Trust, Hazy Family Community Property Trust, to rezone approximately 1.0082 acres of land, 54 and 56 Meadowbrook Lane, of the last acre addition, lots 1 and 2, Block A, Denton County, Trophy Club, Texas, from R12 Single Family Residential District to a PD, Plan Development District R12, to allow for fencing along the front and side of the properties. Since this is a public hearing, we do have a speaker request form already filled out, so I'll go to the public first. Chris Hazy, if you could come and speak, please. No, sorry, I'll get to you right after that. I was down, had my head down reading, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Hi. First off, thank you for pronouncing that name so perfectly. Not everybody can do that.
Try my hardest. Please state your name and address
My name
for
is
the record.
Christine Udvar-Hazy, and I just wanted the chance to say thank you for looking at this. Stephen and I have lived here over a year now, and we've loved the city. We've loved getting to know our neighbors. We've talked to them about what we'd like to do with the fencing. We've gotten their advice and opinions and understood the city better, and we don't want to be, like a problem. We want it to be beautiful and enhance the neighborhood. So instead of having a big brick wall with nothing on it, we wanted it to be a little more beautiful and have landscape and have it be lower. And that's it. I just wanted to see if there was any other questions, but we have been really impressed with the way things have gone, and we really love living here.
All right, thank you, Ms.
it.
Hazy.
Thank you.
You'll have also the opportunity if you want to speak during the action item when we get to it,
Great.
if necessary. All right,
Great,
thanks.
thank you.
Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this item? All right, yeah. All right, hearing none, I'll hear from either the applicant or staff, whomever you'd like to go first. Or are you just a member of the public?
No, sir. My name is Helen Eve
Are you
Beadle.
representing the applicant?
No, sir. I am your new planning
Oh,
consultant.
hi, Melanie. It's nice to meet you.
I was going to get to all of that, but thank you.
So I'll turn it over to staff.
All right. Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I thank you for the opportunity to be with you this evening and present this unique and meritorious request. So the property is currently zoned R12, which is a minimum of 12,000 square foot lots. Both of the lots in this item are over a half acre. So if we were looking at traditional like tract homes, obviously this type of request would not be appropriate as it is for this property. It is located at the corner of the intersection of Meadowbrook and Meadowbrook. As you can see, the existing zoning will be maintained. The PD is more of an overlay to allow the fencing. In the image before you, this shows the property boundary in blue. There are two lots, two separate lots with homes and structures. And then the red dashed line is the approximate location of the screening wall, fencing landscape that they are proposing. Along the east-west portion of Meadowbrook Lane, it is just here along the north side of the lot line. This is what we call the right-of-way line, and then there's typically a parkway where you can have sidewalks as well as utilities. So the right-of-way is the best location to start measuring from. The application and some of the imagery that you'll see identifies the setback being 25 feet from the curb line. Curb lines can move, curbs can be reconstructed, right-of-ways change. So staff has requested that it be formalized where it does state that it'll be no closer than 25 feet from the curb line and no closer than 12 feet from the property line. And looking at the image before you, that's where the red line is approximated. And back here is where you see the 25-foot front building setback. Along the western boundary of the corner lot, they're proposing to put it right on the property line or right in the property line. Along the eastern property boundary, in some of the imagery you'll see in a landscape plan, there's one image, I lost my arrow, that shows the wall going just a short distance to about here. But the applicant would like to have the opportunity to extend this proposed screening element all the way to this property corner that he shares with a lot that he does own as well as an adjacent homeowner. This is a blow-up image from the landscape plan. And as I said, the red dashed line is the approximate location of the wall along the front and the sides. The wall is proposed to be 25 feet from the curb and no closer than 12 feet from the front property line. And then the side yards, it will be right on the property line along the western lot, and then on the eastern lot, have the opportunity to take it this far back to the common property corner. As you can see in this image, there's a scale right here that shows the wall stretching just to this length, because someone might just build a wood fence to that common property. They would like to have the option to do either. And here's a larger image to show you where the man gates are, as well as the driveway gates. The materials proposed are decorative metal, masonry materials. The code allows for a height of up to 8 feet. The public hearing notices were mailed, posted, published as required by Texas Local Government Code and your town's regulations. But when we received information to publish for the packet, we did not have any formal support or opposition letters that I was aware of. Today we received a very strong support letter. I believe you all have a copy in front of you this evening because we just received it. And the applicant handed me this evening 6 other nearby residents that have stated that they are in support of the proposals. So in summary, before I get to some imagery, I wanted to state that the proposal, it does provide for a heavily landscaped and visually appealing open fencing and screening wall concept that adds property value, aesthetic quality to the community, and also provides for the desired security. This is a bird's eye perspective of both of the properties, and this is Meadowbrook on the western and along the southern. We talked about the man gates here and here, and the vehicular gates. This is just a plan view. More imagery showing the setback from the curb line. It also shows you the mix of materials, the decorative metal, masonry, and heavily landscaped. Very nice appeal. Staff has included in your packet recommendations. Some of these are just kind of housekeeping, nothing that is outstanding. But to summarize, where the wall will be located, no closer than 12 feet from the property line and no closer than 25 feet from the curb line. The owner shall provide any accessibility devices required by emergency services so that they have the ability to get in there should there be a need, and that the corner lot, 56 Meadowbrook, will provide evidence through a scale drawing, a plan elevation, in order to receive the building permit that the wall location proposed at the corner does not fall within the site visibility easement. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. As you know, the applicants are here this evening and here for you.
All right, thanks. We'll get back to you when we're done with the public hearing. Would anyone representing the applicant like to speak before we close the public hearing? You can also speak during the regular action item if you'd rather.
Can I just mention one of the
Sure, go ahead and come up to the microphone.
Sorry.
No worries.
Forgot to mention one other thing, and that is that we have 4 grown children, and they have 5 grandsons for us. And the goal is that the oldest is 7 and the youngest is 3 months. They want to be dropping their children off to us. So this will be a nice, secure environment for little boys. That's the whole point.
Thank you, Ms. Hazy. Okay, so I can close the public hearing, or if the applicant would like to address us before we close the public hearing, that's fine as well. Okay, seeing no one else wishing to speak, we'll close the public hearing at 7:24 and move on to the action item. Item 3B, discussion and recommendation regarding a request made by Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Trust, Hazy Family Community Property Trust to rezone approximately 1.0082 acres of land, 54 and 56 Meadowbrook Lane of the Last Acre Addition, lots 1 and 2, Block A, Denton County, Trophy Club, Texas, from R12 Single Family Residential District to a PD, Plan Development District R12, to allow for fencing along the front and side of the properties. All right, Commissioners, this is our action item. The floor is open for discussion, motions, the whole thing. Any thoughts, any questions for staff?
Yeah, I do have a question. How high is the wall?
The landscape plans provided state that it will be per code. The code allows up to 8 feet. I have not seen an elevation drawing that has that spelled out, but I believe
Well, is that 8?
it can go up to 8 feet according to the code.
Okay, and is that 8 feet to the top of the pillars or columns, or, I don't know the architectural term, but, or is it to the top of that lower portion underneath the metal?
Traditionally, it's measured to the fence top, whereas the column caps are usually another 3 to 4 inches above.
But not a substantial difference?
No,
to-
sir.
I think that was where Paul was headed with that. It's more just the decorative pieces.
Right, it's a
counting.
cap.
Yeah, okay. I do have a couple, or did someone else have a comment? Can you just summarize for us exactly what we see in this rendering that would not be permitted under standard R12? Just so that we understand exactly what the deltas are, so we can focus on those.
The front building line, the wall, excuse me, there are a couple of things, and the code is a little contradictory because it states in one location that you can't have a fence in front of the main structure. So obviously that would ruin the concept for this property, and then this home is much closer to the street frontage. So that's one of the items, and that it should not be within the front yard setback was another, or side yard setback was another part of the code. So those are really the two elements.
Okay, so yeah, so just for clarity's sake, for those of you that are thinking about it, typically if you take a typical residential lot in Trophy Club, the front fence won't extend beyond the front edge of the primary structure typically, but this is going to be more around the entirety of the property, if you will. Now, in terms of side setbacks, what is staff's feeling about that? I mean, if you think we have, I mean, obviously what we have here is a beautiful concept. We have 4,100 residential lots that have a side setback on their fence. So tell me the value of a side setback for a fence.
I don't know that I could, are you saying
Just
dollars quantify it?
No. The import of it.
An opinion?
The objective value of it, like why is it there to begin with? Why do we enforce it everywhere? To begin with, I
Well,
guess is the question.
and this one is unique because, let me go back, there's a small strip along the western lot. So this is the property line, and then there's another small strip here that's at least 10 feet width at its narrowest point. So that wall's not really going to be closer to the curb. There's already a really nice open and parkway and setback there. So that's why this one does merit being along that property boundary.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because what I wanted to point out was that, when you hear fence on property line, it kind of makes you think to the side. But what people often forget is that your property line doesn't extend to the curb, it extends to wherever that right-of-way boundary is that you pointed out earlier. So I guess my question would be then, how far from the curb is that fence at its closest point? Give or take. It doesn't have to be perfectly precise. Yeah. 21 feet is the closest to the curb?
About 35 feet.
On that top part there? Okay. So from a quantitative standpoint, this particular fence is really not any closer than any other fence you see in someone's side yard adjacent to the street, right? Because typically a fence would be behind the right-of-way, so that's at least typically 10 feet off the curb in most places in town. There are a few exceptions. So this is at least that far, if not farther, all the way throughout. Okay. Those were my main questions. I have some other thoughts, but I'll turn it over to you guys. Go ahead, Mr. Biggs.
I have one. I believe the staff presentation says the fence itself basically falls within the current definition of a fence, whether it be here or anywhere else. So that's all fine. It was just, the only difference, I think, is the front. That's really the only, and that's why we're having a PD versus a.
Right.
Ryland, for one clarity also, is talking about that left side, that's Hogan's Glen.
They already have
actually
that
have-
wall there on the other side of the,
Yeah, but they actually own, that's part of Hogan's Glen HOA.
oh, really?
Yeah,
That's unique. Okay.
That's what strip,
Yeah.
yes, sir, it is.
and they built a beautiful wall over there.
They did.
Damn prison.
It is pretty kind. It is kind of imposing when you make that hard left turn there, for sure. Makes you wonder what's on the other side. Okay, so any other thoughts or questions, guys?
I did have another question.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, the HOA question is, so this area of the community does not have an HOA, is that correct? Right. Okay. And as it relates to a PD request of this kind, what sort of opportunity is there? And I'm kind of thinking conceptually right now, it looks beautiful, right? And certainly a lot of trust in that the Hozzies intend to make this area not only more beautiful, their home environment, it's going to add value to the community. I think it's hard to argue against that. But what about 10 years or 20 years from now, when maybe there's signs of aging that's starting to occur with the wall, and hopefully the Hozzies are still members of our communities, right? But in that event, what sort of opportunity do we have now to include in the PD some sort of measures for the aesthetics of the wall long term? Is there code that already exists that will help address that?
Yes, your code enforcement and your property management code. Yes, so if something starts to deteriorate, you start with the courtesy letters, it's time to make repairs, and if not, then, things don't go too well. But the wall could be removed, but hopefully not. Hopefully it will be perpetually maintained.
And so I'm glad you brought that up as well. So in terms of if, I know this is a hypothetical scenario, but say the wall was in a state where it needed to be removed. So this PD is not restrictive in that it requires a wall to be there. It's just an option for the current property owner,
Right.
whether it's the Hozzies or not, correct?
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you.
My question is pretty simple. I was walking around there earlier today, and I noticed, I'm going to call them footers or a foundation that's coming around. I'm thinking that's where the wall's going to go, right? It's a concrete pad, if you will. And, yeah, that's it? Okay. That's all.
I guess I've got one burning concern on this. My wife and I walk past this particular property regularly, and it's beautiful. And from everything I see here, it's going to look beautiful. And I guess the concern I have is, what if everybody else in Trophy Club gets the idea that they want to do something like this across the front of their properties? And we're all different. What you think is beautiful, I might think is ugly. And suddenly we have 4,100 variations on a theme, and the town just looks awful because everybody has their perception of beauty out the front of their property. So in as much as I'm very supportive that we do this, how do we protect Trophy Club from the interpretation of this, becoming kind of a fashionable thing through the community?
I understand, and that's a good point. The PD, the Plan Development District, is the best tool to be able to allow someone to apply for something that doesn't fit the code. And then you all have the opportunity to consider, the materials, the quality, the, appropriateness for this, and make the recommendation to City Council. So I don't feel like we're setting a precedent across the board, because if we did, we would be changing the entire code. This one is unique. Those are very large lots. The wall, especially with it having the openness in the feel, it's a lot softer than more of a barricade. So I feel like they have done what staff had asked them and encouraged them to do to make it more appealing, and it's your role to be able to weigh and vet proper and appropriate applications.
Kind of like follow that up. I know this is R12. I think everything around it's R10. And so would this PD essentially be for just directed at an R12 zoning, or that doesn't matter? It could go the R10 areas can.
This PD is specific to these two properties only.
Yeah, and that, just to be clear, that's the case with any PD. It's identified to a specific location in site, and typically we number them sequentially in town. There's a few old ones that have letter designations, but so calling it Plan Development R12 is maybe a little, I don't know if we have the opportunity to change it to PD 37 or whatever we're on by now, but if there's a way to do that between now and the time council sees it, that might be good for people that come in and years from now and look at the zoning map and try to make sense of it. As somebody who's tried to make sense of it for going on 18 years now. So yeah, I totally understand where that comes from. Building on what Mr. Poole said, I think the idea of managing to exceptions is probably going to be the primary question that we're going to be hearing both here and at council. And you made a good point about that's why the plan development process exists. One of the things I would ask is, do you happen to know, either of you guys, off the top of my head, I don't think we have any plan development zones that are smaller than 1 acre. This is just over 1 acre. I don't think we have any others that are that small, right?
I don't think even in the gas well sites.
Yeah, they're all multi.
Those are all
If you think about it,
R12.
yeah, they're R12 with 8 to 10 lots, so they're obviously more than a couple acres. Yeah, so.
And even these are R12, but they're extremely large.
Right. Another thing is, prior to the redevelopment of this property was a grandfathered one-off problem for a very long time. Those of y'all that live here a while will remember, I think there was some old school buses and stuff parked on it. So if there ever was a time to accept an exception, accepting an exception where an existing exception was there for the last 35 years since the town was founded, it's a good one to do. One thing I would say, though, and I may, depending on how council's discussion of this goes, I may bring it up there as well, is it might not be the worst thing for us as a town to consider a minimum acreage for a PD, potentially, and amend the comprehensive zoning ordinance to establish a minimum acreage for a PD in the future, just to prevent the potential proliferation of, because what you have here is a large enough lot that you really should be allowed, I think, the ability to have a little more leeway. But when you're talking about 1/5 of an acre, 1/4 of an acre, 1/3 of an acre lots, to Jonathan's point, then it gets a little out of hand. So if anything, if we're going to set a precedent, it'd be kind of nice to set a precedent towards positive redevelopment rather than the other. So that's just a thought that I had when I was reviewing the packet, that maybe a minimum acreage is a good thing to do. That's not related to this particular item in front of us, but something to think about. Any other questions for staff or any other discussion, guys? All right, hearing none. The floor is open for a motion if anyone would like to make one. Yes, sir, Mr. Stevens.
Yes, I move to approve PD-22-001.
Okay, we have a motion to approve made by Commissioner Stevens and a second by Commissioner Biggs. The motion to approve is on the floor. Is there any discussion amongst the commissioners?
Yeah, right. If we make this motion, if it's approved on vote, can we put our thoughts and some of the discussion that we've had here into the PD limits so that goes to council?
Yeah, we can certainly, we could either just cover it here in our discussion of the motion on the floor if you guys would like. We can talk about it, and then typically I'll go to the meeting and talk about what we discussed. Or if you'd like to amend the motion to include a condition or a comment, you know, we can always do that as well. So either way, the floor is open for an amendment to the motion if you guys want to do that. But we can, if there's any discussion on the motion, we can have that discussion now.
Well, I'm just thinking, why not amend it per your, I like the idea of limiting the size.
Yeah, that, can't do that with this ordinance. It requires a change to a different ordinance to implement it. Yeah, so we would have to, in order to do that, we would have to open up the ordinance in the comprehensive zoning ordinances that puts the structure around how to do a plan development overall.
Okay, so how and when can we do that, or?
We would have to agenda that here and then move it on to council after we made a recommendation on it. So that's certainly something we can look into in the near future, I think. And I will, it sounds like everyone's kind of on the same page, so I'll, unless I'm unable to attend, I'll ask one of you guys to do it for me. But when council hears this, we'll make that comment as well, just as a recommendation. Any other discussion regarding the motion on the floor? All right, we have a motion to approve. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? There are none. We're unanimous approval, 6-0. And we have no further items on the regular session, so we will adjourn at 7:41 p.m.